MVBIA's, I guess first time in a long time having an educational session like this. This is sponsored by our Dynamic Future Leaders Group, as well as our Women in the Building Industry. A lot of fire and energy there, and they said, let's do something to have, on the educational front. So we decided to have this session today, something I think that they might find interesting and a little different. We're going to encourage that everybody participate by asking questions. And if you find anyone in the group up here that doesn't know what they're talking about, just say so. Challenge the group, because what I think you'll hear through this session is there's a lot of different opinions on things and a lot of different ways to do things, and different companies do them differently, and a lot of misconceptions. That you may have one idea about something just because you weren't exposed to some other issue, alternative, concern. And that's what we want to bring out today, so that we could all discuss and learn a little more about how the building industry works, how builders function and work. My name's Jerry Berman. I'm currently this year's president of MVBIA. I'm area president for MI Homes. We're a national builder out of Columbus, Ohio. I started in the building industry in 1980, before about half the room was born probably. But I see a few guys that make me feel good here. I'm not the oldest one. A few that look a little. The people with hair on this side of the room. But there is a trend towards baldness. Anyway, I started in 1980, and I've been in the home building industry since then, working almost the whole time for publicly traded, large national builders. I'll let each of the other panel members introduce themselves and give you a short bit about their background. So if we could start with Rob.
Thanks, Gary. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. My name is Rob Fisher, and like Jerry, I have been in the building industry since really 1980. I started sort of doing that summer job thing and then migrated into it after college. I started with a small custom home builder, and then moved into the national home building side. And for the actually, I guess I kind of went back and forth. I worked for a small builder down in Old Town Alexandria for about 9 or 10 years, which was a great experience because I was able to work through product design. I worked with the engineers, the architects. We designed the product. I would purchase the project, and then I would actually build it. After that was a terrific experience. In many ways, some of my best experience. And then I ended up, I moved over to Pulte Homes for about 16 years, where I worked until 2009. When I left there, I was the vice president of construction for Virginia, Maryland, Delaware. I started my own company in 2010, right after I left Pulte, and I work primarily, I guess what I would call infill sites, redevelopment, Vienna, McLean, Arlington. I will work outside of those areas, but that is my primary focus. I do spec building as well, where I purchase a lot myself. Again, mostly redevelopment, where I'm purchasing older houses, tearing them down, building new. And then I like to mix that with, ideally, almost a 50-50 mix of doing custom homes for clients on their lots. And I'll do anywhere from, I've done as few as 3 a year, I've done as many as 8. look forward to today, and I hope I've got some pearls of wisdom for you guys out there.
I'm Diane Cox-Bashir. I started in the building industry in 1975, so I have 5 years on the I entered the building industry after working in communications and broadcast. I was also a reporter for one of the local newspapers, the Northern Virginia Sun, and my beat was to cover City Hall in Falls Church. And I had a degree in political science, and really the two clicked because I was covering zoning hearings of all things. And I found the land planning and the process, political process of getting community approved and zoning approved very, very interesting, because I had to really write about it. I would cover these hearings, and it was before the age of computers, and I would go home and I would write from my house in Arlington till about 2:30 in the morning, and I would then get in the car and drive over to the newspaper office and put in my coverage of the zoning hearing so it could be in the next day's newspaper. But one thing led to another, and in 1975 I had a real estate license and went to work for a builder in Vienna selling townhomes, and really learning the building side of it, the sales and marketing side of it. And then later went to work for another builder where I had to spend about 3 years on site out in Great Falls. It was one of the first communities ever built in Great Falls. And the reason I was really on site without a model in a trailer is that the builder went bankrupt. And at about 1977, 78, I had to help finish the houses and somehow we pieced it all together and delivered the homes. But by 1973, after working a couple of more sites, usually in those days they were from trailers because pre-sales were great. The Washington market was just doing fabulously, and no one really needed a model in those days. I went to work for Stanley Martin Company from Marty Alloy. By 89, I was president and co-owner, and left, sold my stock in 95, started my own company, which is Bashir and Edgemore. So it's been a great ride. I love home building. My main enjoyment is to find a piece of land, envision what type of community could exist there, position the product, design the product in the community itself, try not to use the same product every time we build a community, and work through the whole cycle of building. And I enjoy it very, very much. I'm happy to be here.
My name is Truett Young. I'm with Stanley Martin Homes. I'm the Vice President of Land Acquisition for the Northern Virginia and Maryland divisions. I've been in the building industry for 10 years. Before that, I was in the site development industry for 10 years. The only builder I've ever worked for has been Stanley Martin. I've been through a variety of different places in their land development and land acquisition department before winding up where I am now. So most of what I know about this industry I've learned there, and it's been from the perspective of a privately held, large regional builder that has been focused on growth. It has been growing significantly out of the downturn. We're a different company now, significantly different company now than we were in 2005 when I started. I showed up just for the downturn. Had no idea.
You're the reason.
Yeah, I'm right. September 2005. So yeah, I look forward to this conversation. I am not a strong building guy. I know dirt. I know moving dirt, laying pipe, and buying land and planning communities, which is again from the perspective of our what I've been taught at the company. But when it comes to the sticks and bricks, I rely on guys like everybody else on the panel to provide that perspective.
I'm Brian Davidson, Executive Vice President for Van Meter Homes and current Board President for Homemade Northern Virginia. Started the industry in 1989 out of college. God's honest truth story. My grandfather was a builder. I wanted to work for a builder. I was coaching a baseball team in Burke, and Van Meter had an office in Burke, so I took a entry-level accountant's job just to make sure I could get to the baseball field. It worked out okay. Been there 26 years, came up on the accounting side, recession hit, the first recession, if you don't know about, right? So, and Gary does, everybody else does, in the early 90s, and I was making $18,000 a year, and they didn't really care about what they were paying me, and got rid of all the higher paid people, and I learned the industry from the ground up. So it's been a great ride, and looking forward to another 26 years. Welcome.
You can hear a lot of different backgrounds, and people in leadership roles in the building industry come from every background. There's lawyers, engineers, accountants, salespeople, construction people, political scientists, reporters, right? Every different background, and it's something that I think you'll find that those who are in the leadership roles in the building industry love building homes. They love taking care of customers. They love the idea of seeing something tangible, whether it be creating a community, building a home, something that you could look at and feel and touch and see and make a difference. And everybody does that in different ways in the room here. Everybody has a role in it, and typically the home building company relies on a huge team, both from within and outside. And I'm just curious if we could get a raise of hand. How many here work for a home builder? Okay, so it's a fair number. And I would venture to guess that you don't understand everything about what your company does, let alone some of the others, but because that's fairly common. You kind of do one thing and you don't get an overview often. And as companies are bigger, you even get less of an overview usually. How many here work for civil engineers? Got some. How about other types of engineering groups? So we have environmental, structural, and geotech. We didn't leave that one out. Distinguished geotech. How about mortgage companies? A lot of people who are very much needed in our business, right? Title companies or settlement companies, representation. What am I missing? Yeah, trade partners for sure. Architects, design. Utilities. What else? Lawyers, I know I see a few in the room. That's why I'm real careful what we say. I won't rub your head again through it. The lawyers. We have the advertising, marketing, land development companies, real estate brokers. What else? What else did we miss? The educators, absolutely important group. Manufacturing,
Building materials.
warranty. So think about that. Think about, and we probably, everyone's not represented here for what the building industry does, what the home builders do, how many people we have to rely on. So when it comes down to that, this is what this session's about. What does a home builder do? What reliance do we place on our employees versus outsiders, and how is it done? Who does what? And it's not simple. Just imagine this whole group and all the disciplines that we deal with, and it's not simple. And then we have to deal with the public, which, that's probably the hardest part, because we don't know what to expect all the time. But we we try through expertise to figure that out and deliver what the public wants. So this session will cover that, the home builders. We're gonna, this program was designed to have 3 sessions, today's and then 2 additional sessions. The next session will be all about land and land development, land acquisition development, and delivering land to the home builders. And then the final session will be more detail about what happens specifically in a home building company, such as how do you design a home? How do you figure out what the home should look like? So architecture, marketing, sales, construction, home construction, customer service or customer care, which a lot of times we ignore that, but that's a big part of every builder's business, whether they want it to be or not. It's important. Accounting, purchasing, finance. Do we have any commercial bankers? Yeah, very important part of the building industry. So that's what our sessions are going to be like today and the future ones. We don't have dates yet, but we'll let everybody know, through the e-blasts when that's going to come up. One other thing that we, MVBIA, put together and wants to see how successful it's going to be, and we're pretty excited about it, is the mentoring program, where, I don't know how many, I think it's maybe 20 of the leaders in our industry, and this handout here kind of describes it, but maybe 20 of the leaders of our industry, and we have more that have volunteered that we just didn't have time to get their bio in here, have agreed to help those who might have questions about their careers or about how the business works, personal things that, someone who might be working at an engineering firm who wants to work for a home builder, or vice versa perhaps. How do I go about doing that? What should I focus on? I'm new to the industry, but I see some other part of the industry that attracts me more. And it will work through a clearinghouse at the MVBIA, where you would submit a question, and you'll get more of that through email after this registration is wrapped up. You'll submit a question, and then one of the mentors will answer it, or more, if they find it to be, a valuable question to answer if they're interested. And it will be anonymous, so that, unless you don't want it to be, but you'll have the option of saying, hey, I hate my job, I hate my boss, the company stinks, what can I do about it? You don't have to put your name on that, unless you want to. And then the mentors will respond to you directly, anonymously, unless they want to give you their name directly. And some will and some won't, but the mentors will want to help. That's why they signed up for this. And some will even request that they get your contact info and have a phone call or meet you for coffee or something like that to discuss the concern and issue you have, to try and help those who are newer to the industry or even have been in the industry a longer time and provide advice. So we're real excited about that, and by coming here today, you'll be able to participate in that. One further question before we get into the meat of the program. How many here are in a building-related job for 3 years or less? Raise your hand. So fair number. How about between 4 to 6 years, building-related, your job? Okay, 6 to 10? Couple, more than 10. Okay, so there's a lot of smart people in the room here. not that when you're young and don't have any experience, you're not smart, but there's a lot of people with a lot of experience, complicated and difficult. You're gonna run across someone who knows the answer. So I'm gonna ask that as we're going through this discussion, you raise your hand or just speak up if you have something to add to the conversation. That makes it a lot better for everyone, including us, to get the most out of the session. The first topic is the home building structure. I'm with and have been pretty much my whole career with publicly traded national home builders. And what's that mean? Publicly traded means that the people that own the company I'm with and others I've been with is the general public through the stock exchange. Our company now and prior ones happen to be traded on the New York Stock Exchange. So anyone could buy ownership into the company. Truly, our owners are the public. And all the public companies are that way, whether it be General Electric, or MI Homes, or Pulte, or Walmart. The structure's the same. We're owned by the public. We're publicly traded. Now, every one of those also, us and other publicly traded companies, are accountable to the shareholders. They own us, so we're accountable to them. The shareholders in all the public companies will have a board of directors, which is a smaller group. The public could be 1,000, 10,000, could be millions in the case of like a real large, like a Walmart or a AT&T. So they have a board of directors that the shareholders hold responsible for the results of the company. So the shareholders hold the board of directors responsible, which is typically a very strong group of outside, and the public domain requires that that board of directors be made up of a large number of non-employees. So it's going to be outsiders. On our board of directors, we have bankers, lawyers, accountants, and we also have the CEO of Victoria's Secret, helpful in our marketing. And I won't say anything else. As tempted as I am. But truly, public companies are all set up that way. Our board of directors and the others will typically have the CEO of the company, maybe the chief operating officer, president, maybe the chief financial officer that serve on the board, and they report to the board. The board is their boss. The board's boss is the shareholders. But the oversight is very limited. There's rules about how the boards have to work, but they pretty much have control of what goes on in the company. And they give that control typically, other than for certain defined decisions, to the officers of the company. The CEO, ours happens to be Bob Schottenstein, but every company has a CEO or president, the guy in charge of running the company. He reports to the board. They have quarterly board meetings where he reports back what's going on, the status of things and progress, plans. So in a public company, the board of directors and then the officers are responsible for everything. And then public companies are going to operate differently. Here's where it starts getting very different and very diverse. Our company, like some of the larger public companies, are what we call decentralized. We have divisions all over the country. So our CEO can't run the day-to-day operation at each division physically. That's impossible. So they'll hire managers like myself to run certain areas. So we're geographically structured, where we have geographic regions, and there'll be a manager in charge of each of those geographic regions. Most of the public company, public builders will have someone above that geographic region because it's too much for the CEO to manage all of the geography. So my boss is not the CEO. My boss is a regional president. He has 7 guys like me reporting to him, and he reports to the CEO. So there's a structure in the larger public companies. And it doesn't have to be public. There's companies like David Weekley Homes that's not public, and they have divisions all around. There's super fast growing companies that are regional, that are expanding, like Stanley Martin, that has divisions, and they're growing into that, and their structure is something that they have to think about all the time as they grow. But then down at the division level, or the area level, in a public company like ours, we'll have a division president, and then the way we're structured, which is the way most of the public companies are structured, or the larger builders, there'll be different functions that report to the division president. There'll be a land function, which could have any number of people in it, for acquisition, development, research maybe, any number of different things. There'll be a home construction function that will typically report to the division president. There'll be a purchasing function, which sometimes reports directly to the division president, sometimes might report to the construction function. Purchasing is something that all of our trade partners are real interested in knowing about, because they're usually the guys who make the decisions on who gets hired. Then there'll be sales and marketing, which might be under a VP of sales and marketing, or there might be 2 VPs or 2 leaders. One for sales, one for marketing. Just depends on how the company's structured. Then there's the accounting function, the finance function, and there'll be customer service, which is critically important but often overlooked, and that sometimes reports to construction. And in our company, it reports directly to the division president, because we kind of think that's a good idea. But public companies are typically set up that way, but some aren't. Like Toll Brothers is a little different. Toll Brothers will have a regional guy or a area guy, but then they'll have a separate land function and a separate home building function. So instead of the home building manager being responsible for land and home building, they have 2 equals. And they separate it that way, and the home building buys land in effect from their land department. They operate, and when I was with US Home for a long time, we did it that way. And then we changed it after many years, but it was that way, where they were separate functions. So that creates a different motivation, and they're all set up to try and reach the goal that we all share of selling lots of homes, delivering great product to our customers, and getting referrals. That's the bottom line. And making money, right? I mean, that's the only, if we don't make money, we're not here. So I hope I've said enough about that. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. But I'll ask one of the other panel members to just describe their company and how it might differ from what I just described, the way our company operates.
So Van Meter is a private builder, local private builder. We build in the Northern Virginia area. And at the division level, when I run the division level is very similar, but we're, as Gary described it, where it differs is who our board is or who we answer to. And I think Pruitt would say the same thing in his company as well. But the group that we answer to are our owners. And it's, as simple as me to get an answer from our CEO is texting him and able to get the information. Your day-to-day CEO is visible as well. We do have, Van Meter does have multiple divisions, so I represent the home building division, but we have an apartment division, we have a supply and manufacturing company in Winchester, we have a mortgage company, title company, so we're just one division within Van Meter. We also own 2 golf courses, CEO likes to golf, so.
One of the benefits of private ownership.
Absolutely. So again, it's really, instead of having the structure that Jerry talked about, it's real simple to get answers quickly, to change on a dime. It's just a lot easier from that perspective. Now, my only perspective is a private builder, so I do talk to my counterparts at public companies and understand the difference, but truly at the division level, it's very simple. We have the same structure as you mentioned. We have sales and marketing VP, we have land development, land VP, and we have that structure as well. But truly, that's the main difference, is who we ultimately answer to.
In our company, Stanley Martin, for years since its inception 49 years ago, we've been a small, local, family-owned business that over the course of the past 10 years has grown exponentially. We're in the process right now of going from being that small, locally owned family company that's based out of Ruston, Virginia, to becoming more of a corporate feeling. We've, over the past 3 years, started divisions in Charlottesville, Richmond, and Raleigh, and increased our presence in Maryland to become more of a mid-Atlantic company. And with that, we've actually watched the changes where we've changed our structure from just a straight, one leadership group in Reston that runs everything to splitting into 2 different regions, and in each of those regions there are a number of divisions, and we've got layers of leadership. And our CEO is just down the hall from my office right now, but in time in January that will actually change. Our corporate office and our divisional office, our Northern Virginia division will actually split. So just day by day, we're watching the changes that come with being a larger footprint. Just because, as Jerry mentioned, you can't have that kind of critical mass and build that number of homes and have one person that's still responsible for it. You actually do it efficiently. You have to have those layers of management. So we're kind of a hybrid at this point. We're a large regional builder that's become more of a mid-Atlantic builder, but we've got parts and pieces of kind of both structures.
Your project's still private.
We are still privately owned. But we do answer to a board of our ownership group.
See, and I guess legally, and I hate to say that, with lawyers in the room, I'm often wrong, but legally, any corporation will have a board of directors. And the way corporations are formed, whether they're owned by 1 million shareholders, and they all have shares, all the for-profit corporations have shares, or they might be owned by one guy or gal, but they have board of directors. Now, if they're owned by one person, that board of directors pretty much does what that one person wants. They can make the decision because they own all the shares. If you're a big public company and you have thousands or more shareholders, those shareholders can oust the whole board. They can oust. You hear of hostile takeovers and things like that. That could happen in any publicly traded company or privately. It's all about who owns the shares. Private companies don't typically worry about that because it's usually just a couple people who own all the shares. Right?
Good segue.
Well, Bashir and Edgemore is a private home building entity, but it functions as a corporate overhead company. It's actually Bashir Edgemore Properties LLC, as opposed to a corporation. And it is an entity which really services a group of different communities which are all separately owned and separately owned by LLCs. In other words, we have a Maymont community in Vienna. It is Bashir Edgemoor Maymont LLC. But this collection of LLCs, which can be anywhere from 5 to 15 or more communities, can all be managed by one overhead company, which is Bashir Edgemoor Properties. So that way, as a finance opportunity or an ability to finance a particular community in terms of acquisition, construction, you can take a large amount, say $100 million, and split it up into the needs of each community from a financing standpoint. So it's an ability to operate which particularly is beneficial to a private company because you can grow and shrink as you build more or less numbers of communities. So I didn't bring an organizational type of chart from that standpoint today, but I know that it's not just a public-private though, because I do believe that some of the public companies probably operate that way as
Yeah,
well.
and I'll say when I was with US Home, when we got bought by Lennar, in 2000 I guess it was, we had at US Home, I think it was like 200 and some or 300 and some LLCs that owned this property, that property, properties all over the country. And it was an incredibly complex thing to keep track of, tax returns for every one of them. So it was great for the accountants. It was great for the lawyers, just to keep the legality of every one of them structured properly so that they didn't get thrown together as some sort of misconception about who owned what. So we're not going to get into a lot of detail about that, but it's not just the private companies, the public companies also are a little more complicated in the way they're structured. But that is a lot from a financing, legal, liability kind of
It is.
reason.
It is. However, if we're talking about a home building company, what I'm really talking about is the corporate entity that manages all this. So in our case, it's Bashir Edgemoor Properties. That's where our functions are directed, and that's where our people are employed. And our people are employed basically by functional capability, which would be the typical home building function, the land, the finance, the marketing, the construction. So I just wanted to explain that particular difference. And it could be set up that way whether you are public or private. But it's a good financing vehicle and a good corporate vehicle in both Virginia and Maryland. We don't build outside of those areas. There was a question.
Yeah, on your sub-entities, if you will, do you have different ownership in those entities?
Yes, we do. And it enables a company to reach out to investors, and those investors, unlike the purchase of stock, which we're talking about in a public company, those investors invest in a particular community.
So you have some levels of protection there too. If something doesn't go well in one community, you're still under good.
Yes. Each one, just to get into the real nitty-gritty here, since many of you have been around more than 10 years, each one of those entities holds a general contracting license, so that the onus liability is not just on the one corporate entity.
Thank you.
We're the same way. I mean, we have 100+ entities that maybe we need to go into business. We do have an LLC for every one of our communities. contracting entity that holds the building license, like what Diane just talked about. So they have a management agreement with each one of these entities.
Would know, or understand maybe, to know that it could work it could work so many different ways, but it's important to know how it works if you do business with one of the companies, so that you understand who you're really doing business with. But a contracting entity that's owned by a parent company, I guess, and that contracting entity really gets hired by all these other 100 companies that the parent company controls, but might have partnerships with other people.
Right, I mean, just like Diane mentioned, I mean, sometimes we bring in institutional money, so there might be different ownership in different groups. But when you're talking about our entity that does the contract, it doesn't have Van Meter in it, it's Virginia Residential Construction. And a lot of the trade partners always ask about that. The main reason we're doing it, and Diane's absolutely right, that there's more liability from that standpoint, but we do it, we do 400 to 500 homes a year, and we don't want to have to sign up. We have 15 communities, we don't want to have to sign up our trade partners for 15 different contracts, so that's why we do it that way. So kind of look past the liability and look at it from the efficiency.
So, go ahead.
That was gonna be my question was, we all work with a lot of it, I appreciate that. Other than Cattler, when we work with Cattler, when we send proposals to them, they insist on bringing their entity name, to that project. And even when we invoice them, we can open Cattler, we have to do that. So every project like that, but I noticed a lot of you have different separate entities, but we just send it to MI Home, Stanley Martin, Van Meter. How does that work in a, God forbid, in a litigation issue?
Well,
Although,
I can tell you with MI Homes, we sign contracts, MI Homes of DC LLC. So we were just talking about, we only have one LLC for each of our divisions. So MI Homes happens to own the entire company, MI Homes of DC LLC, but it is a separate company. So you're only doing business with MI Homes of DC LLC.
yeah, I mean, that's.
You're not doing business with MI Homes. And we'll sign the contracts that way.
And with Stanley Martin, you're doing business with the parent company, that is the management company, effectively, Stanley Martin Homes LLC. The properties are all owned by single purpose LLCs also.
So now that sounds like it's really complicated. It sounds like, well, I thought I was doing business with, sometimes employees don't necessarily know who they're working for. I thought I worked for, right? But they work for this other entity that's set up for some legal reason.
We have an entity set up just for payroll.
Yeah.
So
So they don't really work for Van Meter Homes. They work for Van Meter Bada. Right.
I mean, Van Meter is a trade name, for lack of a better word. And so to answer your question, the legal answer is, when you actually do business with us, and you're signed up under Virginia Residential Construction. It's great that you reference Van Meter when you do that, but if you ever had, you won't file a lawsuit against it. If you ever did.
You would twice.
Kessler is the only one that asks us, we have to do that, but I noticed none of you guys did. So I was just,
Yeah, well, then we're making a mistake.
I mean,
yeah.
Our guys are supposed to be doing that.
They're doing it the right way.
Yeah.
Ultimately, if it says it on an invoice, it's not a big deal, in my opinion, but the attorneys may disagree with me, but.
I appreciate we get paid.
Damn lawyers.
By contrast, we have a national contract with you guys. At that point, we're dealing with the Peninsula Institute, would that be correct?
If you have a national contract that's signed by MI Homes, Inc., you have the contract, so that if, for example, if there's a dispute with the local division, you can deal with the national entity. Yeah. So you better give us an affirmative price.
Fantastic. We'll work on these guys.
Yeah, but with all that being said, Van Meter, Stanley Martin, or everyone else cares about the reputation. And their name is on everything they do, whether it be just for marketing or for legality. Their name being on it means a lot. And even though these structures are set up in a way that affords some protection, the companies generally will not look to that as something they ever want to have to even think about. If someone from Stanley Martin made a promise and agreed to do something, regardless of the entity, the likelihood is very, very high that that will get done just the way it was done, was promised or agreed to. So that, you know, even though the lawyers are all about risk management and this, and some of the business people in the companies are, the bottom line is we want good reputations. Everyone here wants a good reputation because referral business, the ability to get great partners to work with us, has to do about our reputation as much as anything.
And Jerry, what we bankrupted an entity, excuse me, we've never bankrupted an entity to walk away from a promise that we had. We're set up to do that way so the whole company doesn't come down if there's a major problem, but we've never done that.
You know, for what, 50 years,
60 years.
60 years.
That question back here.
Oh, sorry. Jared, what I was going to say was, and what we tell our clients when we put all of those quivers in the arrow, so to speak, of the contract documents, is you don't have to use these, okay? Invariably, most of the time, they never are. But it helps us out if there is that what-if scenario, and particularly what I found is with home builders is they treat you the way you treat them. And, you know, the problems that I see, the lawsuits that arise are folks that are, maybe it was the downturn, or maybe they're just that sort of contractor or supplier that are a problem going into it. But it's useful for us to have those in there for those situations, but 99 times out of 100, it's never even thought about because your reputation is good.
If I could just tag on to that, this business really is all about people, and know who you're doing business with, whether it's a banker, realtor, trade partner. The difficulties that we have sometimes are when an entity is sold or goes out of business that we're doing business with. The recession, the banks, that where you thought you had a relationship, a trade partner that may all of a sudden be bought up by a corporate entity that's up in Philadelphia or out in Colorado, and all of a sudden you can't get your cabinets anymore. You know, these are the issues that we run into. But I found over the years that we, particularly all of our relationships through NVDIA, that when we know who we're doing business with, we can pick up the phone. We don't have those little problems.
If you have a full after contract, you got real problems. Unfortunately, there's only a couple people in the room that we do business with, but I would not sign our subcontract agreement, I would not sign our sales contract. It's pretty interesting, but generally, it's only going to come out in situations like that.
And I have to say, since you're one of your subcontractors.
You signed our subcontract?
We signed, yes. And you was talking about the invoice, you are covered, because even though it's paid by Van Meter Homes, there's the subdivision, say for Hamilton, and then the lot, and everything like that, so you guys know very well, so thank you, and there's no, definitely no issue. Do what you say you're gonna do, you're fine.
Right.
I had a question, and that is, if you have these separate single asset entities, you guys rely on recourse financing or non-recourse? Does that make sense?
You're probably going to get a different answer from everybody.
Anytime you can get non-recourse, that's what you rely on.
We have a guarantee company, so we have a company that puts up and that's the only recourse. It's not personal signature. Back in the late 80s and before that, it was personal signature. Now they use it. But we have grown enough that we just have certain entities that have network, and that's our recourse for the most part on all of them.
So the structure, world looks a little different down here in my end of the state. You know, I've lived in that environment for a number of years, and I think what you'll find for the smaller home builders is there's a lot more variety in the way we structure. My structure is extremely vertical. There's pretty much me, and there's this handsome golden lab that lays on the floor next to me. That's about it. So what really becomes, to Diane's point, what really becomes important for companies such as mine are those relationships. You know, I don't have a land company. I don't have a marketing department. I don't have in-house design. So my relationship with my engineers and my realtor has to be really solid. Perfect example, I got a call 2 nights ago about a particular lot that a potential client wanted to meet me on. And we agreed to meet the next day. So in the morning, I called my engineer. I said, hey, I'm going to meet this client on a particular lot. Tell me about this lot. He stopped what he was doing, produced a ton of information for me, so I was able to show up at the meeting 4 hours later, very well prepared. I had some background. The soils consultant had done a number of houses in that area. I was able to speak to the quality of the soils. I was able to speak to what's been done in the neighborhood. I was able to speak to the zoning and so forth. Now, I won't get an invoice for that, but they do pretty much all my work. So if the job comes my way, the job goes to him. So those, you know, the relationships, Diane really, she couldn't be more accurate about that. When you don't have the structure in-house that we have, or that these folks have, you folks become a lot more important to us. The other side of that is the financing side. You know, I've had to develop relationships with commercial banks, and I will generally structure anything that is, well, first of all, we're not working for ROI, we're not working for stockholders, we're working to try to avoid having to reach into our own personal savings and pull out additional money to get out of any particular project. That's a bad day, and it's all recourse, full recourse. But I will do, occasionally I will do a separate LLC if I have outside investment money coming in. And a lot of our decisions with for my peers, I'm going to call them peers more so than competitors, because to be honest with you, a lot of the information that I use to make decisions really comes from relationships I've established with my competitors. There's a group of guys, well, there's the Custom Builders Council inside of NVDIA, but then there's a group of us with similar approaches to business, similar experience levels, and we'll talk a lot about what's happening in the market, what we see happening with the trade base, what's happening with pricing from you guys. So that, again, the relationships become really, really important to us. But it's a very, very vertical structure. We pretty much have to wear all the hats. You guys got to help us out.
And we need your help too. But we have those layers of legality in the middle. But the bottom line is we usually don't, it's very rare that we rely on any of the layers of legality. It kind of works the same way. It's just a little more difficult to get through all those, sign all those things with bigger buildings. And we talked a little bit about finance, I heard here. Public home builders, almost all of them are kind of the same way. The money that they use to finance their operation is typically coming from the corporate office. I don't have to go out and find money. I get phone calls sometimes from bankers, hey, we do construction loans. And I say back happily, we don't need construction loans because we, on a corporate basis, have money from the shareholders, from the originals when stock is floating. But we have public bonds that we issue. We have lines of credit that work for the whole corporation. So every time at our division we write a check, I don't have to think about, is the money there? We just keep writing checks. Now, once in a while, we have to sell it, put the money back. But by and large, if we're doing that, we don't have to worry about writing the checks. And writing those checks, it could be $10 million for a land purchase or more. And usually we ask before we do that. We always ask before we do that.
True, it doesn't.
But that's different. Good guy. Sometimes you gotta stop. That's a big difference, very big difference amongst companies. And even some of the public companies are structured differently, where they might have partnerships with Wall Street investment companies, Wall Street banks, BlackRock, or a Baupost who's been coming into this area, or a Miller and Smith with Nash, which is the largest home builder in Japan. One Loudon is half owned by Nash. Sekisui is the name of the builder, and they have banks, and there's other entities that have come into the United States to partner up with builders. Traditional ones, like BlackRock, Baupost, I just know of those two, but there's many of them. And more often, they'll partner up with land developers who will, but some of the building companies, like Miller and Smith, for example, they really operate as a developer and a builder. Stanley Martin to some degree, but not, and Van Meter certainly to some degree, but they kind of separate their entities a little more, I think. But some of the builders, One Loudon is a good example. It's Miller and Smith. You don't see Sekisui House written anywhere, but they're a 50% partner. And they sell lots. They're not just the builder, Miller and Smith there. They sell to MVR, and I think Stanley Martin might have just gotten in there, and Winchester Homes, a bunch of commercial entities, Alamo, Movie House.
Yeah, that was my question. So when you were talking about the structure of Toll Brothers and how their land and their construction is separate. I mean, so basically their land, if I'm not mistaken, their land is actually basically marketing to them. But they're marketing to other builders as well, correct?
Toll Brothers actually generally doesn't.
Okay.
When I was at U.S. Home, for a long time, we had a land entity that would be responsible for buying land, and then they would come to us first. We had first shot at it, and they'd say, it's going to be $125,000 for a finished lot, and we have 150 of them. What do you want to do? And if I didn't feel like I wanted to buy 150 of them, I said, I think 50 is okay because you're overpriced. Occasionally words like that would do. And frankly, that's why that system was changed, because there was too much, the land entity became too independent, and they would sell at the same price to our competitors, and the land entity made a lot of money. But it didn't give us the opportunity that we were supposed to get, because we're owned by the same shareholder. We would make more if you just sell it to us. You'd make your profit, we'd make ours. But that doesn't really go on too much. That was maybe 15 or more years ago that they stopped that.
The distinction is whether or not your land group is a profit center or not. So you can generally tell from a development standpoint, if these large PUDs are being developed, they're typically run by a land group that's a profit center. Whereas, I don't know if your guys' land group is a profit center.
It's not, I mean,
Our group is, we develop lots to build houses. We will sell lots out, but it's not, it's not the core function of the group.
we'll do it in the same way with it. We'll sell lots if we have a couple thousand lots and we want to get some cash in the door early. We just to get. But we are a home builder, that's, I mean, that's, we'll hear that, like Mary mentioned, you might have a job that you can make a few bucks on early on, but you're giving away a lot of control profit, so we don't like to do that.
And we will do that as well. You mentioned golf courses, golf course where you all have investment, Old Hickory.
Right.
We had about 450 lots down there that I had assembled. I had 5 different parcels of land and zoning the whole process. We, the Sharon Edgemore, couldn't build them all because the hold would have been too long on the land financially. So to help the absorption, we brought in 2 other builders. But, and then we kept the big lots for ourselves later. But in that regard, our group paid the same price from the LLC that owned all the land. It wasn't a land division, but it was a separate entity that owned all the land and developed all the land. But it did not build all the houses. But we paid the same price as we sold to our 2 other builders. And that's always a suspicion, though, is your home building entity getting a special break, you know, as opposed to if you come into somebody else's fund. But in order to keep doing business, I go back to the same old thing. In order to keep doing business throughout the years with the same people, you really do have to keep it straight.
Let me ask you something, Jeff. We do a lot of work with Ramington, we do a lot of work with Willisford. And Willisford is exclusively land development. And so we see them sell a lot of lots of pieces of home and selling them right now.
We just bought lots.
Yeah, but Ramington, you know, I haven't seen, you know, do they build their own houses or Ramington also?
They're exactly the same as Willisford, Remington Group is the.
But I haven't seen any requests, who's the builders that buys from Ramington? Oh, very,
Who's the builders who want to buy, or who's the builders who want to buy?
So currently
Yeah.
it's Van Meter, Miller and Smith, Winchester, Knudsen Homes is going in there. Hope I haven't missed it.
We see a lot more diesel and standing market over at Willisford. It can be all right home. Right.
Yeah, we're near Willisford, we're not in Willisford.
Oh, you bought it. Okay.
So financing's a huge issue for the big companies that are publicly traded. It's not a local issue generally, very little concern. It's handled by the Treasury Department at the corporate office. For the smaller companies, it's lifeblood, right? Without financing, you're out of business. You need finance. So it's a much bigger focus.
Banks and institutional finance, sometimes will go out and get equity money which goes on top of the local bank.
Okay. Okay, we talked a little bit about structure, and we talked about different types of builders and how we're structured. How about decision making? Listening to what we've all said, and we've heard, actually, I guess everybody but myself, we have access to the ownership, we can make a decision like that, right? I mean, Rob just has to ask
He's pretty much game for anything.
it's pretty much that easy. And then if you think about the decision-making process, it's going to vary, and I'm guessing it varies even with everyone here at the table, depending on the magnitude of the decision. So if you're going to buy a large parcel of land, you're not going to make that decision yourself. You're going to have to go to someone. What I do when we buy a large parcel of land, and I think this is pretty common amongst the publicly traded builders, is we do a lot of analysis in-house. Is this something we want? We do a lot of analysis about, are we going to be able to make money? Do we have the right product? is it something we can do? Like if the land is for a 10-story high-rise condo building that we've never built before, we got to think real hard because we've never done that before. A lot more risk when you're doing things you haven't done before. And then after we decide we want to do it, I'll discuss it with my boss just over the phone. And we have a relationship where that's the way that works. And I do it that way. First of all, he wants me to do that. But secondly, when we're going to make a decision to actually buy, we have to get approval from what we call a land committee. And that's made up of our CEO, our chief financial officer, our chief legal officer, our treasurer, and my boss, or one of my counterparts' boss. And we'll get on the phone, we'll send them a package, which in our case, the package is about 5 pages long. Description of the land, summary of the financial forecast, of how much we're going to put out, when we're going to earn our money back, whatever terms are. Description of the competition, and discussion of the product that we're going to sell. When I was with another company, the package was an inch thick. And now we might do a lot of the work that could create that thick package, but our guys and the other company, they didn't read. They just wanted to make sure you did the work to get to that point. So we do that. Our guys will do it usually within a couple days of a phone call, which is different than some other companies where, you know, you could get on the agenda 2 weeks from now. Some other large companies. In the others here, I don't know how your process. And then smaller decisions like architect, what kind of houses to build, that's strictly up to us locally. What kind of houses, who we're going to hire to do it, the sales, I guess everything else is up to us locally, other than the large land purchase, any land purchase, frankly.
So here, are you subject to a business plan? Do you do a business plan every year, or do you want to carry out that?
We do a business plan every year where we describe how many homes we think we're going to close, sell, start, how much income we're going to make, and all the details behind that. Our business plan also includes how much land we're going to buy and how much we're going to spend developing that land, improving it. But we still need to get permission to buy anything, even if it's on the business plan. Yeah. Anytime we're going to buy land, and it could be a 10-minute phone call, but sometimes it's 2 hours. You know, if it's $20 million, it's not 10 minutes.
And I'd say we're exactly the same thing. You get quick decisions, and we're not really, it's really more about the financial part of the equation when we buy land. We typically have it run out of the market. We did just purchase Arcadia Communities, which has some out of market stuff, which is a big acquisition for us, but
He's saying that with a soft, even voice. That's incredibly huge. That's really big.
now I gotta figure it out. That's another meeting.
But more than 10 minutes.
Yes, more than 10 minutes, but yeah, we're exactly the same way.
Yeah, we have the same structure in place, where we actually go through, our feasibility studies of our properties and create our feasibility. We convene land committee. We don't have to do it on the phone because we're all in the same office at this point. Oh, sorry. Couldn't figure out what John was trying to say. Let me talk louder. So we have a similar process where we go through our land committee. Our packages are about 15 pages. We pitch to the CEO of the company, the founder of the company, the chairman, Marty Alloy, our COO, CFO, and the division leader, which is the region leader. It's generally an hour and a half, 2 hours long, but we talk through exactly, what we develop effectively a business plan for each one of our communities. determine what could happen one way or the other, like one or different, and then get a decision. As far as, we have a business plan we work from, but the mantra at our offices, especially our land acquisition group, is that opportunity will trump strategy all day long. If it's something that we think we can change the company or make better, we will do it. If it's outside of our plans, so we have.
What about timing in terms of the economic cycle? Do you, at early parts of the economic cycle, focus more on land development and later on buying finished lots? Who in the companies that are focusing on market planning?
Any purchase right now, because a lot of our deals, Stanley Martin, and it gets to kind of look further down the agenda, but, our company does very few finished lot purchases. We do mostly rezonings and entitlement work, which is why we rely so heavily on people in this room. So our projects can be 3 years out before we actually get a shovel in the ground, if they have to go all the way through the process. So when you're looking at a large scale project, there's a lot of work goes into determining when we believe the next cycle is and how this project will ride out the cycle.
Does anybody know when the next cycle is?
The point being, the longer project, the more conservative the underwriting is. Because there will be another cycle, we just don't know when. We're hopeful that it's far enough away, but you naturally will become more conservative in your underwriting to figure a deal out as it stretches out.
And half of what we do the same thing, we do entitlements. Half of what we do is on finished lots, so we kind of do that as a safety net for us. So we do a little bit. What do you, Gary? How do you guys?
Pretty much the same exact way. We'll buy raw land, we'll look at the length of the time it's going to take to approve, which might not start for 3 years or 4 years. If it doesn't go well, it could be 5 years. We know communities in our market here that's been 20 years in the making. And that's why you're more conservative when it's a bigger purchase with a longer cycle. But we will also rely on our financial models, okay? Because, and I think everyone does it in maybe a different way, but the same kind of idea, and banks certainly do it when they finance deals. If you have to go to a bank, we'll actually schedule out, if it's 500 lots in a community, we'll schedule out the starts of the homes, but before that, the development of the ground, getting the approvals. In February of 2017, we're going to start our development work, the improvements. Will be done in 8 months, the first section, or 6 months, and month by month, all the way out to 2023, whatever it is. And we have every start, every sale, and every closing with the sale price and the cost to build the home, all the way out to until that last house is settled. And then getting off the bond and doing the customer service, if that goes beyond the last house settlement, which it will, minor dollars when you're out in 2023 or something. But the financial models, and this is something that's been very difficult for us, and I know the other large builders and small builders, I suspect, mediums. Every builder right now is buying land, and it's expensive. It's at the housing prices that came down during the downturn was a steep drop. They've been coming back, but the land prices haven't caught up. So you're paying more. The percentage of your house price, if you sell a home for $300,000, historically the percentage might have been 30% of what your land cost you, let's say. So it might have been $90,000. Well, right now, that $300,000 home, the land is $130,000. So your margins get screwed.
It's because there's more competition buying lots than there are people buying houses. A lot of builders in here, in the last recession, we didn't lose any builders out of this market, so there's less lots to go after, and so we're competing with everybody. That's why doing what Sandy Martin does, and Ron, and ourselves in terms of getting entitlements, getting doing rezonings, and that's where you can really get land low.
And you take more risk when you do that.
Absolutely.
But you have more opportunity, risk, reward.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to the age-old question in home building is where do you make your money? Do you make it in the land or do you make it in the home building? And historically, we make it in the land in terms of the bulk. That in order to be able to complete the task, the full cycle of the community itself, and create the community, obviously we build homes as well. So we need to have a little bit of each here going on in our corporate plans all the time. And diversification is something too that I think is extremely important. What type of land do you buy? What price point are you going to be in order to plan out your corporate plan over the next 5 or 10 years? Because these corporate plans are not, when you do a roll-up, you look at all the communities that you own and that you're working on, you're not looking at 1 or 2 years, you're looking out generally now about 10 years, right in that 5 to 10 year period. So you want to plan in some diversification, both geographically and from a price point standpoint, if you are a production builder as opposed to a custom builder.
You know, it's interesting, so much of what you guys are saying applies to what we do on the infill block building, just on a smaller, more concentrated scale. We've got some of the same issues. There's a tremendous influx into the infill building market, for lack of a better word, non-professional builders. And there's a lot of investors who have seen this infill building and have come in and have run the price of the infill lots up to where it's almost unmanageable. And unfortunately, these investors are not going to have quite the staying power. This is not necessarily their day job. So what we've seen is this artificial inflation. Lots I was paying $454 in 2010 are now $630, $640, $650. So we're seeing some of the same things. In terms of the feasibility, what I found is with most of my peers, wherever they spent the majority of their career is what their process, their own, their current company's process looks like. I've got peers who came through the Toll Brothers system, and their budgets and everything else mimics a Toll Brothers budget. When I do a feasibility on a particular piece of ground, it's the same thing. It's what's the competition, what's my lot cost, what project am I going to build, what's my house cost, and then what do I think I can sell the house for. The difference is there's more sort of non-tangibles that go into it, so like my capacity. Where am I in my own corporate cycle? What do I have? Do I have enough custom builds going on? Am I going to be? Do I have other projects in process that are going to finish? And then the other big one is that whole financing money. And there's a certain amount that peers and I will finance personally. And then if there's a gotta-have lot, that that opportunity comes up, and it's not something that I'm comfortable leveraging myself, and we have to go outside, or I have contacts I can call and bring in investment money to secure a gotta-have lot pretty quickly. But it's a very similar process, just done, pretty much sitting in the front seat of the truck on the back of it. You can put I can put the numbers together pretty quickly to figure out whether or not something makes sense.
Yeah, just going back to the main cost, how high they are. I was speaking with the president, as we all know, since overall this year. What they do is they actually front end their communities
there's cash flow, and then there's the accounting, which is generally accepted accounting principles. There's very specific rules that auditors will look at, the tax people look at, the IRS, and from the accounting point of view, there's specific rules. You have to allocate your cost of the land all the way through to all the lots. But all your cash is out up front. So you really don't get your money back, which the public's, we never talk about cash flow. But what we do that places a huge importance on cash flow is something called return on investment or internal rate of return. Different companies just call it something different. And it's a calculation of how much, if you invest $10 million today, and it takes you 7 years to get all your sales, there's a calculation of how much did that $10 million earn. Was it 10%, 15, 20? And it's a strict calculation, and it's based on the cash flows. So if you put $10 million out today, and you get $30 million back, but none of it comes back for 10 years, you're not going to do the deal. Because the return over 10 years, it's not going to work, and there's risk involved. But if you spread it out over time and get 30 million back, it's maybe you'll get a 20% return on investment. And every public builder has and probably the private's the same, will have a specific number that they're targeting. It might be for return on investment or internal rate of return. It might be 15%, it might be 20%, it might be 25%, it might be, yeah. So a deal that's brand new, like building that 10-story high-rise that you never did before, you don't have architecture for it, it's in an area that's questionable, you might look at that and say, I need a higher return because there's a lot more risk. So instead of needing 20% return on investment, I'm going to need 25 or 30%. And that's one of the more difficult parts right now because the land costs are so high, and most of the land sellers want you to buy it all up front as opposed to paying them out over time. When you pay them over time, it makes that return much easier because you're only paying $1 million now, but you'll start getting your money back. So you're getting your return on a smaller amount than if you paid $10 million now. You need a whole lot more back quicker. So if you could spread out the purchase, MVR was their magic. Historically, they were one of the most successful companies, certainly in the building industry, but envied by Wall Street. Because what they always did, and it was a mantra for them, was they wouldn't put the $10 million out today. They just wouldn't do it. And they had so much buying power that they could afford to go to the sellers and say, hey, I'll pay you a little more for your land, but I'm not going to buy it all today. I want you to spread that purchase out over time. Or they would bring an investor in to buy the land, and then they'd buy it out over time. So they never had all this land sitting on their balance sheet that had to be earning a return. They had much smaller numbers. So any return they did get wound up being higher. Now it became more and more difficult for them to do that when the market got tighter and other builders were competing harder for the land. And the sellers knew they had a precious commodity. And they said, no, we want all of our money now. Sorry, I know you'll buy all of our land, but we'll find someone else who will buy it too. But that's a complex concept, but it's the real simple part of it is it's always better to put less out up front. The less you put out up front, the better off you are.
Unless some of those improvements need more amenities and things like that, you have to look at that.
Yeah, it's a balance.
It really is a balance, and it all goes back to, that's why most of us not only buy raw land, zone it, and develop it, and build on it, but we also buy finished lots at the same time. So it's like going to the grocery store, you have a market basket, and you fill it with some expensive things and some less expensive things, but it all adds up. We all roll up our total financial profitability every year, and even though every single project doesn't necessarily return at the same rate, you look at it as a total market basket.
And that's a good point. I would venture to guess that everybody here at the front table and any builder here, as well as other business owners, have had good deals and bad deals. And I also venture to guess that everyone here at the front table, right now, today, has deals that are losing money. We don't, but everyone else. But
We make it up in the
you make it up in the long run. But that's a real big part of the home building business. You have A communities, A+ communities, you have to have them. You have Bs, you have Cs, and you do have failures, right? So particularly if you're big, the bigger you are, the more likelihood is you're going to have a community that's losing money, that you made a mistake on, or that some geological problem occurred, or you're in the city of Alexandria and you're going to start building and all of a sudden you hit an archaeological find, and now you're on hold for 2 years.
Fine volunteer.
Well, yeah, but that's an ethical issue that you have to deal with, but the law, but it really comes, the business, it's a very big part of our business. You have to have real high producing jobs, because you know you're going to have some that aren't going to carry their weight. So you always are looking for those, and we all compete for those, and there might be 20 bidders for a $10 million job that are willing to just write a check for that great job, and not, you find that, and it's not in your business plan, but you got an opportunity to do it, you write that check, because you believe that's going to be the home run. And you need home runs because you're going to have some strikeouts.
I'll let you all in on an industry secret. If you ever hear a builder or developer refer to a legacy community, that sounds like really cool, right? That means they've been around a long time, and we're not happy with it.
So, go ahead, Samir.
I was going to talk about how is Crawford, in different counties, has affected you guys?
It is.
I mean,
And
I
let-
read a lot of prophets when I look at some plans as well, but several markets are still.
Samir, that's a great question that we're going to cover in our next session. Because that truly could be a half hour in and of itself, just that one topic.
But from, kind of the starting point of any new community is the acquisition. The acquisition guys will take we take all the information from all the different groups in charge of our company. The purchasing group gives us direct costs, the development group gives us development costs, the finance folks, which I'm lucky enough to have 4, 5, 6 of them here from our office. Actually, yeah, they do. That's what they do. They run our pro forma, which effectively is the business plan for each community. So when you're buying a piece of property, especially when you're paying cash for it, you're making an incredible number of assumptions. And there's, and a lot of those assumptions involve things that, the market, involve the entitlement process, which is a little bit out of your hands. There's just a million different moving pieces. So you try to bring it all together, make one business plan or performa for one community, and you hope you're right, which is how you wind up having some neighborhoods that are just huge winners because, maybe you weren't right, but you were other communities where, you're not seeing inflation in the market that you thought you were going to see. Or, you're in a job longer than you wanted to be and your pacing's off. But you normally, you develop that first pro forma, and as you go through the community, you do a big business plan for that community all the way through the project until it's finished. And, it ebbs and flows with the market. So there's a lot of moving pieces together at the beginning, and then you spend the next however many years figuring out if you were right or wrong.
I know you want to talk about.
Well, we have a question over here.
Sorry. My question is, what are you as home builders doing to attract the first-time buyer that you didn't have to do 5 years ago, to get into the market?
So that comes down, I think, a lot to the product diversification. So, whereas, some home builders, specialized in, our company used to be a second, third, fourth group of home. Over the years, we've become, everything from entry level all the way out, all the way to, the higher end homes. To build as many homes as we do, you have to spread across all the different spectrums of the market. To attract your first-time home buyers, or to get people to move out of their parents' basement, you've got to build communities that are located in places that people want to be, and people cool, and at a price they can actually afford. And that's it's hard, very hard in this market.
Lifestyle is the key to attracting for millennials is that good lifestyle. Around things and have walkability to restaurants and bars.
And what's happening there, I think, and the way it's being forced by the first-time buyers, because they'll only buy what they want to buy, not what we want them to buy. Well, not what we traditionally have built is you're getting town centers with 2-over-2s, or with condos, or with smaller units. Flats are becoming way more popular than they were 10 years ago. Certainly than 20 years ago. There's no comparison right now. And there's so many, and builders are now changing the way they operate. Lennar is a good example, who's now building mid-rise, high-rises that didn't do it 10 years ago in this market. They'll build because it's for first-time buyers. The only way you can get the density with the price of land in an area that has all the amenities that the first-time buyer wants is by going up. And they're smaller. And other builders are doing it. Toll's doing it. And they have a whole division, City Living or something like that. And some of them are doing it nationally, and you're seeing more and more of them doing it here, where you'll have, all the building going on in like Mosaic or downtown Alexandria. One Loudoun's a good example of bringing condos in and to be able to get more first-time buyers there. It's product and land cost driven, and it's a big shift. It's a big shift in our market, and I think nationally, that some builders are faster to accept and take the challenge than others. But builders generally don't want to change things because there's so much risk involved when you buy land that you want everything else to stay still. And not, because every time you change something, you're adding risk. You don't know if it's going to work or not work. Product-wise, location-wise, what kind of faucets you use, what color your siding is, or your brick. Every time you change something up, you're getting more risk. MVR historically has been very successful. They had proven product that they were able to duplicate over and over and over and over in many different communities. So they reduced the risk. They knew exactly what it cost. They knew buyers liked it. They knew how to build it. Now they just had to find the land to put it there. Things have changed. That's not working the way it used to work. And builders are changing slowly, some faster than others, but they're adapting to that for first-time buyers.
I just want to tag on that just a moment. I got a laugh this weekend. We had a buyer who purchased one of our smaller townhomes, single woman professional, works for the State Department. And she loved the home, but for the first time in my career, I heard through our sales staff, she said, I love this home, but don't you have anything smaller? And it was our smallest product. So there is a trend toward, even if it's not a flat, there's a trend toward a feasible smaller product. That was 1,300.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems smaller, like everybody's saying here. And then simple both in floor plan, but also simple, we gotta learn to simplify our process for the next generation buyers because, I mean, my kids are not quite millennials, but when I call them on the phone and they text me back and say, what's up? So we've got to figure out how to make, how many appointments do we all have in the building process that we deal with? We got to find a way to simplify that process and take less hours out, because it's just not going to work for the next generation. It's a very complicated process that we're going to have to pass.
I see, I do a lot of work with PYA, and I think they're taking the lead in that one and doing about future communities, in which, mostly in Maryland, and not even New York is one of them, and we've been able to capture that smaller, even houses for better than 1.5 million. I'm asking who's buying them. A lot of single boys, a lot of single, people who are buying them. So we've been pretty successful in doing that.
Yeah, and that's been their model for a long time, and there weren't many competitors
Yeah.
in that, and now they got a head start on the other buildings because they're right in the right place for a lot of time.
They have lifestyle
Already built in.
Maybe.
Yep. Why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll try and get out of everyone's UK somewhere around 11. Life cycle kind of puts all the pieces together, and Diane put this together kind of as a guide that we could look at and see what the business is from start to finish. You want Diane, if you would, to just walk us through this, and then we can talk a little bit, but the general idea is to get the overall picture here. On the land side, we'll have a separate session that just focuses on land, so we won't spend too much time on that, but the big picture of what goes on in each of these functions, I think is going to be interesting and important to know.
When someone comes to work with our company, we share with them our company business model, but we also make certain that they understand where they fit in the process of home building. And in order to do that, it's basically home building 101. Someone needs to understand what is involved in building a community. When I say a community, whether the company has 1 project, 5 projects, or 200 projects, this is true basically of every project or community. I don't call a project a project, I call it a community. And it's just a habit I formed many years ago. But this is the actual life cycle of a community, and this is what we've really been discussing this morning. And it all is circular, from beginning to end. Acquisition, land planning, land development, community marketing, production planning, home sales, and the actual home building is kind of a small portion in terms of the cycle, but not in terms of the dollars that you spend. But you see under here, the home building is vertical construction, that's the construction of the home. Then you get into your warranty service, customer service, and your community closeout. Then your finance is down underneath, your reporting to your investors. So it really is a circular process from beginning to end. And as each of you sit here and recognize what part you play, all the way from financial to development of product, to branding, to the actual management of the people inside the entity. This is really what it takes to build a community. And it's what we do.
What we do, and if you look at this, where do most of the people work? What would you say? What do you think? Where do you think?
I would say vertical, but I think I'm wrong.
I don't know, you're wrong. What do you think?
I would say vertical, because you have all the trademarks.
Well, just employed, and that's a good point. If you count trade partners, certainly the vertical. But just for employees within a building company, where are more of the employees? It's, I think, far and away that next to the last spot, home sales and vertical construction, right? I know with us, I mean, far and away. Okay, so if you have, like our division here has right around 50 people, and 24 of them, more than that, 26 of them, more than half are just in those two circles, those two, home sales and vertical construction.
Whereas the land planning may be one of our consultants, maybe with our engineering firm or a land planning firm, that may not be in-house.
Right, and depending on the structure of the builder, land planning has a lot of different aspects, land acquisition, a lot of different aspects to it, but a lot of times you're dealing as a builder with outsiders helping you with your land plan. Some companies have their own land planners that they'll design the community, they have engineers in-house to help with the land development and the land planning, maybe even up front on the land acquisition. We don't. We have the right, and I think you do your own to some degree, and you'll have an engineer help.
Right.
Right, because you have to just to finalize and make sure everything's right. On land acquisition, you're going to have, we have two people that do land acquisition, but they also do others. There's bigger companies than ours in the marketplace, like MVR, for example, that have guys, they have a whole crew of guys that only do land acquisition, nothing else. But even in their company, the vast majority of their employees are home sales and vertical construction. So, I'm guessing similar percentages, you know, almost half, or somewhere around half the people doing that. Land development, we have two people that will do land development in-house. There are some builders that won't do any land development. They'll only buy finished lots, or they'll hire a land development manager, outsider, consultant, like a contractor, who will manage the whole process for them. Just depends on how they're structured.
And most of us are, when we do land development, we're generally going through a general contractor. We're not putting pipe in the ground. I think that's true for you guys as well. So a Hazel or a Rogers, or we're doing that through a general contractor. We just manage the general contractor.
Right. And that's similar on the home building. We don't employ as our employees, plumbers or framers. It's through general contractors, but we manage that house construction.
We like to say we really don't do anything.
Well, most of you say that, Bella.
That's okay.
In our next session, we talk more about the actual development of the home, as far as the utilities and how it can communicate effectively to make sure it all comes together.
Yeah. In the next session, we'll get into, and in the third session, we'll catch the last piece of this, the last two large boxes. But the next session is all about land in detail. And the reason we did it and structured it this way is because of any one decision, and there could be some debate about this, but of any one decision, your land acquisition decision is the most important. If you make a mistake and you buy the wrong land, it's real hard to fix that. If you make a mistake and design the wrong house, it's pretty expensive, but you can fix it. You know, you get rid of the ones that are wrong and you build a new model, get a new one. If you make a mistake in your marketing, you fix it. If it's not working, you try something else. You buy the wrong piece of land, pretty hard to fix that. You can't just, you know, shoo it off. You have to work your way through it the best you can. So that's why the next session is all about land and all the difficulty and opportunities that are involved with it. But how many of you in the room here deal with the land, anything that has to do with just the land, not with the home building itself? Yeah, so quite a few of you. And what is it that builders need to do? You know, we have our processes in place, and they're difficult processes, but what is it? Do you have any thoughts or questions about how the builders get the land approved, contract with you to help? Is there any, yeah?
Effective communication about who to go to, as far as getting the pipe in the ground. Like, we've got great communication with Dominion, but for sometimes smaller builders or other power companies and such, an effort to go joint trench with all the utilities to get our stuff in the ground. It's, you know, we want to be in there and get all of the utilities in the ground prior to the homes being built. But
And
it's kind of.
who do you work for?
Comcast.
The first two letters are okay.
Got it now?
No, that's a good question. I think that in a larger sense, that's one of the most challenging things we do as builders across this whole spectrum is communicating and getting everyone on the same page. And I think what we probably don't do, we could always improve in is just that.
I think it's knowing who to go to.
And who
You know,
goes?
say what comes first, chicken or the egg, you know, because everybody has a different process.
Well,
And,
everyone does.
you know,
And what would you think about if you had to deal with the builder, if you put a call in to the builder who's just not doing as good a job as you think they should be in any of these disciplines, and you said, who's the best person for me to deal with? This is what we do, and this is the issue we have. And I know at our company, if I got a call like that, I don't deal with some of the individual disciplines. You know, I'll see what's going on, and maybe, actually, I am responsible for it, but I don't do it, you know, every day, because we have great people doing that, but they don't always do what they should do from your point of view. They may not even know that you're having a problem, and this is something we as builders, I don't know if you face the same thing, but we face it all the time where we don't hear from you, or you're dealing with someone who's your immediate contact, and you don't want to go over their head. They're a pain in the neck to deal with, and you don't want to go over their head because you're afraid there'll be some sort of repercussion for doing that. There won't be at our company. I know the guys in our company, and I really would encourage anyone, and I've said this to people that we deal with, if you're having problems, don't be bashful. You could send me an email, I don't care. I might not, I'll tell you I got it, and then I'm going to talk to whoever about it. it, but I think it's a real issue that we need to address. You know more than we do. Those who work for us, for the most part, know more than we do about each of the disciplines. And we don't do a good job at two-way communication at the right level. Maybe because you don't know who to talk to. And each builder's different. And that was one of the things we were trying to get out through this meeting was each builder's different.
That's right. I'll be calling you, actually.
But that's an advantage, right? That you know when you speak to Rob that you got someone who's going to get it done and you got the right person. If you call, you don't know who to call at the really big companies. So I would suggest that you go high up. The higher you go, the better. I don't think there's anyone at a higher level that's not going to appreciate that you have an issue. And I can't talk for all the companies. You might get fired for this, but
I agree wholeheartedly with Jerry. All we want to do, especially if you're talking about trade partners, is if there's issues out there, whether we think that we're going to pay for it in the long run, you guys are not going to continue to deal with this if the process is tough, or you're going to bake that into your pricing, so we want to know.
I mean, as a chief, I tell you what's my problem. Communication, we know exactly the right person in each company to talk to. It's always no problem. Then the problem has been with 50% of the companies out there, not particularly do that, is the number of boards. Somebody can say, oh, it's a new feasibility study. 1,000 acres. And then you go out there and you need to know rock, you need to know clay. Then you know what? You go out there and do a board and you say, oh, there's too many. I mean, you just said the land is very critical for you guys. You want to make sure you buy the right land. And then you go out there and do 5 borings on 1,000 acres, and you make a $100 million decision, and then you come to find out when you develop that there's so much clay, rock is a problem, Hazel is having a $100,000.
well, why didn't you do a better job?
That was an easy one.
5 borings are not enough.
Yeah, but you know what? That
We need to go boring.
you're smarter about that than most of the guys working at the building company. Some of them have really smart engineers or employees, but you do that all the time. You're smarter about it. You need to tell us and then remind us that, hey, look, 5 boards is not going to be enough for 100 acres. You're not going to find everything. Oh, you're talking about the job you're doing for us now. I just figured that one out. We ought to move on to another. That was a lousy question, by the way.
No, but I'm really serious. In the industry, it's an issue of, that's a lot of borings. And when I started in this business, my old policies tell me, Samir, you can never drill a site enough. You need more boring.
But there's a balance. You heard Diane saying earlier a couple times, she said balance, balance, balance. We always have to make decisions about how much do we spend doing borings versus how much risk do we take in buying this property or anything. There's a lot of things like that. We'll never know all the answers. We don't know all the answers. If you want to study things and pay to get all the answers, we never get stuff done. We're always under crunch time-wise. Have you ever experienced that? Always behind, right? And we're always under pressure to get the homes started and built, to get the land development and improvements built, to get the zoning finalized. There's so much time pressure and there's so many moving parts that you have to stop and say, okay, we're done with this piece. Now let's move on to the next. And you don't look back, right? You have to make decisions with the information you have. You don't have perfect and complete information. We do that every day, right? We make decisions about our customers every day. You have a customer, and this goes down to the tail end, all the way to the end of this chart here. We have a customer that comes to us and says, I've been in the home 7 years, and we just found mold. And this is something that just happened with us not that long ago. Yeah, maybe this was another company. I'm hearing the story from Brian. Trying to give him good advice.
Do you have anything else you want to add?
But, okay, customer has mold. So we go, 7 years, it's okay, it's out of warranty, we're still gonna go there because it's our reputation. We don't rely on our legal documents for this. And we want to know, was it something that was caused by us initially that's been incubating for 7 years? Well, what we find is that the customer replaced a shower arm and got a new head, and they did it themselves, right? The guy really knew what he was doing. And the leak that he found was a slow leak because he didn't do it right. This is our opinion. And it seemed pretty clear to us. We sent a plumber in, we sent, our customer care manager, our VP of construction. We're all looking at it because this customer then didn't tell us when he found the leak either. He went and got the leak fixed. They had to rip out his whole master bathroom. He's spending $15,000 to replace his master bathroom, and now he wants us to pay for it. Now, if we rely on the legality of it, we just go back and say, hey, our contract says you have to notify us first and give us the chance to fix something. Oh, by the way, our contract says you're out of warranty. We didn't do that, but we went in there and going back to the boring situation, how many holes do you drill? We looked at this and we had to make a judgment. Are we going to spend, it was about $20,000 to fix and all this, and he just wanted to check. Are we going to just write him a check for $20,000? All the information. We make decisions without 100% of the information. We had enough that we felt we were doing the right thing by saying, hey, Mr. Smith, when you replaced your shower head, everything points to, and this is why, that's what caused the problem. You did it 6 months ago. The amount of mold you have here looks like it's only been growing for about 6 months. I'm sorry, we're not going to do anything for you. And that hurts us to say that, because we always want to just do what the customer wants, but you can't always do it. We want to bore more holes, but we got to move on. We got to start this process. So you take, I don't know if you face that all the time, right?
Yeah, obviously on a smaller scale, but, a lot of the stuff I buy, I've got like a study period, and if I'm competing for the lot, the study period can be the difference in the way the seller looks at the deal. So frequently, it's maybe a 14-day turnaround, something like that. On the infill, most of the stuff, there's already a house there, so you're fairly secure. Our borings are really more geared towards stormwater management.
So there are a lot of climate.
Yeah, environmental, that's true. I've had to do environmental studies on some larger pieces, extends out back and so forth. And it all comes, that relationship with the consultants, the ability to turn the work around quickly. And you really do have to guide us because, as a home builder, you got to know a little about a lot, but you don't necessarily have to know everything about it.
And that's where the team comes in. That's why small or big, we rely on professionals that do that all day long. The bigger you are, the more likely it is you're going to have in-house professionals. But you're still going to need help. Attorneys are a great example. We all use attorneys in the environment we're in, and there's all sorts of things that require you to be exactly right legally, or at least understand the risk. It all comes down to risk assessment and payback, but you have to understand your risks, and the lawyers are going to tell you what it is, and they're going to try and structure you in a way that you minimize your risk. And I'm guessing that the sales contract that the customer signs was created in all of our cases by an attorney that was looking to protect all of our interests, period. Right, we paid the attorney to do that. If we didn't do that, just one deal or two deals, we sell homes to attorneys too. Or just to smart people who think that they have something coming to them, whether they do or they don't, that they're going to come running after you. So sometimes you need to be protected. So real important to us, in every one of these line items, we use attorney. Even for community marketing, you have to disclose certain things when you market, right? You have to obey the law when you market. There's not one of the things in through here that doesn't touch that. Decision-making is going to vary, and who do you talk to get a decision in different companies? When you're dealing with anything on the land end, in our company, there's only a couple people that you will call, so it's fairly easy. When you're, and I don't know, is that the same in your company? So.
Got a department head at each one of them, and I'm a control freak, so a lot of stuff goes through me, not necessarily making the decision, but I'm in the loop, but I'm sure you'll. Apparently,
Whatever happens, 5 boarding's fine, don't worry. Mayor doesn't know what he's doing. Now we got a problem.
Are there other geotechs in the room for you?
Thanks.
If I could just tag on one thing that we haven't brought up today as part of this whole process that I think we need to discuss the next time too, or could be discussed, and that is the difference between someone who is buying finished lots, a home building company that's buying finished lots, and a developer is one critical item that a developer always sets up, and that is the homeowners association and the homeowner association documents. So as part of this life cycle in community closeout, you see here over on the right-hand side, part of that is turning over the homeowners association to the homeowners. And it's very important. I learned some lessons early on because I spent a lot of my early career in Montgomery County, Maryland. And that's a jurisdiction that is very pro-homeowner from the standpoint of homeowners associations. And you have to get those homeowners in your own community involved early on to learn about the governance of their own community, their own homeowners association. And educating them is a true task. Because when you do get offline and you do leave that community, you want to turn it over in good shape, both financially, having charged enough for use, activities of the board, committees that you try to set up in the community so that they really fully take ownership of that. And that's a very, very important part. And where that role is in each of our community organizations is also critical. Generally, it's within the land development department, but also the sales and marketing group, it plays a critical role here. Because what tends to happen, that we all need to safeguard against, we're wearing 2 hats, we're the developer and the home builder, is that the homeowners want to come to that homeowners association meeting and bring all of their list on their own home. And so that critical homeowner warranty, customer warranty, and homeowners association have to be 2 separate areas.
How many
I would
people
suggest we
here
talk
live
about
in
that.
a community that has a homeowners association? Who doesn't? I should understand.
Oh.
Wow. Wow, we're all saying wow.
Yeah.
Any new community being built now that has more than a couple homes, I mean, some that have 5 homes,
I have one with 8, and I have to get them to take the association.
has a homeowners association. And it becomes a very, it's it's actually frequently ignored by builders, but it's a very important part of our development process.
And one of the big reasons is because a lot of times the turnover from declarant control to either a homeowners association or condominium association triggers statutory implied warranties. So you want to start that ball rolling, because once that well-funded, now forget about the individual homeowners who are less likely to sue, but when you have that en masse, well-funded association come after you, that's when it starts getting into problems. You want to really oversee that process. So there's literally plaintiffs, lawyers that are out there. They find out when that happens, and they will send people to the association and put the fear of God and get them to sue.
But you just need experienced people on staff and very experienced legal team to guide you through that process. And that legal team may many times be a specialty firm or someone in the firm who specializes in homeowner association and working with the management company.
And I think Diane made a very, very good point. One of the things in designing the community, my community basically, was to get somebody to help me prepare the homeowner's budget next 10 years out. Because if you're doing in the 55 age restricted market, they are primarily going to be on fixed income, and so the fixed kind of, the budget that they have to pay, they sort of be mindful of that. So what's the maximum, how can you get the best benefits to cost and keep the expenses low is a very important part of marketing the homes in future. And particularly when we had when we had the big recession and in New York and some Miami, and some of the condo people left, the burden on the rest of the homeowner association for the vacancies was kind of increasing. So they remember that.
You have a person that just handles that, or no?
I mean, it's handled through the land, but it's one person who's done it for a long time. Absolutely, we have in-house counsel, but we have someone very experienced that deals with that. We don't want to leave our legacy from the community in case of you guys, then they will literally on. Even if we don't want to have problems with it, we want people to have good basement out on names or on there, so just don't do it.
That's a good point. The management of that is very difficult with homeowners. With home builders, I know from my experience, don't want to have to deal with the homeowners association at all. I don't know if you feel the same way.
It's a burden.
It's a burden, and it's not. We're not selling homes. We're not building homes. We're not doing improvements on the land. It's another thing that we have to pay attention to, and a lot of builders tend not to do a good job with it. So there's consultants out there that help.
What drives you guys setting up an HOA? Is it because of proper condition? Because you have to have a piece of common area out there that something has to own, disturb the community? We don't have a small lot of community.
Common area.
It's a huge burden on those homeowners if you're looking,
It's
support
generally,
an HOA.
it's generally environmental. If there is an outfall that is a detention pond, for example, that would never go on a lot, that is a subdivision, typical subdivision lot, therefore, by definition, you have a common area, because who's it going to belong to? It has to belong to the association. You don't just do it directly to the
Yeah. So if you have 10 acres and you're going to build 8 homes, an acre each, there might be 2 acres that you own that's going to have, or some smaller part of it, that's going to have a retention pond on it. There might be open space, just open space. Well, who's going to own that after you're done selling the 8 homes? Or if there's 100 or 500, 2,000 homes, there's open space. Who's going to own it?
Maintenance and liability of our parcels.
Yep. So the owner of that becomes the homeowners association. You have to set up someone to own it unless you want to own it forever and take care of it, which we don't want to own land forever and take care of it. So that's why homeowners associations, at the very basic level are set up to take care of that common area that's required as part of this community. It's required for, the county's going to require you to have open space. They're going to require stormwater management areas that someone has to own. The county doesn't want it. The builder certainly doesn't want it forever. So you set up a homeowners association. And that's just a small example. In a bigger example, you'll have a clubhouse that the homeowners association owns and lets all the residents use. You might even have a golf course that the homeowners association owns, playground, ball fields that the homeowners association owns. So it gets very complex, and it's a business. It becomes a business that different builders deal with in different ways, but there are management companies out there that you can hire that will kind of do that for you if you don't have in-house staff. And I don't, some of the builders have people that kind of supervise that, but don't actually do the day-to-day management, and others don't have anyone. Usually sits in the land department, and they don't want to do it. But you got it. It's very important. That's a good subject.
And it's also a part of buying a lease, which is the final part of the cycle of complete.
Yeah, so if you look at this, the cycle repeats itself all the time. We all start with buying land, whether it be a single lot or it be 1,000 acres of unapproved land. Either way, it all starts with land acquisition. We all go through a process that's an analytical process as to whether we're going to buy it, and if we want to buy it, how much we're willing to pay. And it's a real complicated process that takes a lot of focus. And then when we decide we want to buy it, we all have to create a land plan. What are we going to build on this land? Unless we're buying something that the land plan's already done, which we do. And that's easier. That creates less risk usually, because it's all approved and done. You don't have to worry about maybe it not getting approved. Or maybe you thought you were going to get 100 lots. That's what your vision would be. And then when you go through the approval process, you only wind up with 60. And then you made a big mistake. So sometimes you want to buy approved land just to reduce your risk, so that you know what you got. You don't have to worry about that piece of it. But through that, then you're going to buy either fully improved, and we use the words improved or developed interchangeably. A developed lot, or doing the land development to get lots ready to build homes, sometimes is called an improved lot, or doing the improvements. So you'll hear it used interchangeably, but then you go through a very expensive process to develop lots. Does anyone have a guess, just in general, in, let's say, Loudoun County, what it costs to develop, let's say you have a community of 50 or 100 lots, or maybe bigger, what would it cost to develop one lot? Just a guess.
45,000.
25.
45.
100,000.
45.
Any other venture to guess? One lot. Excluding profit. Just to build the streets, to put the underground stormwater detention, quarter acre. What do you think? Yeah, it's good. Anywhere, if you're maybe in some outlying areas where the requirements aren't quite as strict, and you might get it done for 35 grand, but it could cost you 70 grand. If you have to move a ton of dirt to get this whole site done and balanced properly, you could spend anywhere up to, you could spend $70,000. This is typical hard cost number. In some parts of the country, you can buy a fully finished lot for $35,000. I mean, ready to build homes. How about, what do you think the cost of lots are finished? You know, like a builder buys the ground, does all the improvements, puts in the stormwater and pays the proffers, all the things that are required. What's the range for, let's say, a 20-foot townhouse lot? What's the range? And I'm saying range from, let's just talk in terms of the counties, Prince William, Loudoun, Fairfax, you know, the close-in counties, PG, on the other side of the river, Alexandria, Arlington, you know, the closer in counties, not the far. What's the range of a lot cost? How much the lot is when you finally sell the home and you have to do your accounting. How much was that lot? What did it cost?
1/3 the price of what you expect to sell the home at.
So if the home is 500,000, you're thinking it'd be 167,000,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. Other thoughts? It's all over. The answer is it's all over the place depending on where you're at. I'll just give you an example. We've built 20-foot townhomes in Anne Arundel County, you know, which is not quite as expensive as this area, where our lot cost is $100,000 for that 20-foot townhome. We built in Montgomery County, same townhome with a nicer front. You know, it's a nicer community, more amenities, this and that, and the lot cost there is $285,000. Same home, same square footage on the home. We're building a very similar home in Alexandria. Almost the same home. You know, it looks different on the outside. You know, your toilets are fancier. Got nicer appliances, but $600,000 for the lot. Same home. I mean, same living space. 2,000 square feet. So what's the lot cost? Now, when we go decide to buy land, it's like, oh crap, you know, what's the right lot? You know, what should we be paying? It's really tough to figure that out, but that's a big piece, and it's easy to start talking about that because, you know, we don't sleep at night often. The land deal. So it's still early. And then just following that through on the housing side, and 30% was a fairly common percent of the sale price. It's gotten as low as what, maybe 20? 25?
Oh my goodness, it's 50.
And what percent do you think your lot cost is?
I mean, it can be,
Yeah, we can use 50.
50%. And this community in Alexandria we're doing, it's going to be 50%. A lot of the price of the home, which is a lot. That's an awful lot. Talk just a little bit about a misconception I think the public has, and probably a lot of people within the industry, about how much does it cost to build a home, right? And typically we look at that. You got to create some level metric, so we do per square foot, right? How much? So if a home is 2,000 square feet, let's say it's a townhome, or let's say a 3,000 square foot single-family home. Most people kind of understand what that is in the public. And what's it cost to build per foot a 3,000 square foot single-family home? Does it cost $30 a foot, which would be 3,000 by foot, $90,000? Does it cost $100 a square foot, which would be $300,000? Is it somewhere in between? Any thoughts?
Depends on the finish.
Depends on the size too.
Anywhere from between,
That smaller house still has a kitchen, it still has a bathroom, it still has a driveway, still has.
Yeah, so bigger homes, bigger homes generally are less expensive per square foot, because you only have one kitchen and small one or big one, and maybe only 2.5 baths. Whether it's 3,000 or 3,500, the baths might be the same. So, price per foot.
between 80 to 120. Between 80 to 120.
65, 70, what was that?
Between 80 to 120, 25.
80 to 120. Now you're from Alexandria or Arlington?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought. And it's more expensive. And the homes are more expensive. The features are higher generally in Alexandria and Arlington. Other thoughts?
325
125?
300.
300? 300. I hope. I mean, but there are
Talking
some,
sticks and bricks here.
just the construction cost of what's coming up above the ground.
I think a lot of it just has to do with your finish and product. I mean, is it hardwood, is it carpet, is it standard quartz countertops, what's your cabinet package? I mean, a lot of it depends on your finish level to what the cost is going to be per square foot.
Also, if you're finishing the basement and you're bidding out the house all at once as for construction, your cost as a builder is lower, so you're able to sell that basement finishing for much less than you would in the first 2 floors.
You almost have to pull that out of your square foot
You
competition.
really do.
Yeah, I generally do, I'm just trying to talk to the client about square foot. Pull the basement out and say, let's assign that a value of X, and then we can talk about the price per square foot for the rest of the house. It's so disproportionate. Makes your square foot profitable. It's not.
So free,
It's also going to vary on the size of your company. Your national deal is Bowen. If I had a national deal with Bowen, I'd be like, "Well, it's deal."
you could get one.
I know, we just inherited them. See you too. But that will vary also. Your buying power of the national deals they can do versus what the three of us can do here is, that's a big difference.
As I say, your labor is going to be a big factor in that too. Trade partners and where you are, so if I'm Richmond, I'm not going to pay as much as my trade partners as you guys are here.
Size of home as well.
Size of home has a lot.
You know, the larger your home, typically the less it's going to be per square foot.
So I think everything everyone said factors into it, so it gets complicated. It's pretty difficult, we have to figure all that out, and then we add all this up and look at the pro forma we got when we first bought the land, and we say, oh geez, the cost is not what we guessed when we bought the land, because we don't have necessarily the house that we know we're going to build there. We're kind of saying, okay, that land will require this kind of house. That'd be the best use of that land. And the house is this big, we need something kind of like it, but not just like it. We think it's going to have this kind of finish inside. We guess it's going to cost us $60 a square foot to build. And then we buy the land, we go through and we get our actual bids to do the development work. We talk to our marketing people, and our research tells us the competition is including courts, and they're including hiring cabinets, and oh crap, we didn't think of that when we bought the land. So now instead of $60 a square foot, it's $68 a square foot. So what
How do
happens?
you go back to the trade, we get them to start from their factory?
Well, they're the deals you got to think about when you're going through this process. You're building up to the final offering of this is the product that we're going to offer. And once you start down that road, it's a long process.
Did you say, I thought in the beginning, about 3 years on average before you start developing new purchase?
If you buy raw land that requires zoning, which is
About 2 years.
2 years?
two is doing a good job and getting a little lucky.
David Stark.
So, yeah,
Before you even start the development work, moving dirt.
Raw land to get in the streets in between 3 to 4 years.
it's a long time to kind of guess where you're coming.
That's right, and when you buy the land up front, you're guessing what's gonna happen for years. And forget all that guess, what's the market gonna be doing? What's the market gonna be doing? That's why I think Brian was interested in anyone who knew what was gonna be happening 3 or 4 years from now. You got a job, quick. Just write your own check.
Well, I do think that's one of the advantages, of membership in the MBA, not to do the commercial here,
Yeah.
but when we go to national convention, and it's generally in Las Vegas or Atlanta or Houston, we come together nationally, and we even have some international representatives there with appliances and styles of homes, architects. It's a great opportunity to get information download. And then you see, your team, if you have a team and you go to convention, it's a lot of fun because you can all go in a different direction and compare notes and get back to the Washington area. And lots of times we'll bring back ideas that aren't necessarily those that would be acceptable in the Washington area.
That's a good point, and segues into NVBIA is the local builders association. Everyone here is a member, I think, almost everyone. And Ed locks the door if you're not. You'll have trouble getting out. I hope you're big and strong, because Ed is. And, it's an association that we're all members of that provides great value to the membership. And this is one example of what the NVBI does. We try and educate our membership, provide things that you might not be able to get otherwise, but there's countless other things that NVBIA does. And one of the ways NVBIA is able to do it is through a strong membership, and this is time for the sales pitch. The membership roles are, in my opinion, one of the most important things we can do. One of the initiatives we took on this year at NVBIA was one member, one new member. And what we wanted to accomplish, we knew everyone wasn't going to be able to do it, was to have every one of our members just bring in one new member. We've had some of the members bring in 20 new members, because every year we lose some members. I mean, we're losing a big member, Ryland, because they had to merge with the now it's Cal-Land and Combs. Arcadia, these guys had to buy Arcadia, now we lost the member. Yeah, so what I'm appealing to you for is if you see value in the association, just help out. And if half of you just could bring in one new member, but if all of you brought in one new member, we're going to have a lot more opportunities to help our membership than we do now. So if you look around you, just find one person that you feel would be a good member for NVBIA. Call them up, give them Ed's number, call Ed up. In fact, we could send out a package to this group, the membership package. And if you could help them that way, that'd be great.
There's over 100 builders in this marketplace, most of them are guys like Rob, but that aren't members of the association. And so if you're doing business with builders that aren't a member, they're missing out on being informed on having a place to handle some of the challenges that go along with working in these local jurisdictions. And, you know,
Don't want to tell you all the hard work
Right.
that the volunteers, all the people in the room here, I mean, Cox Communications, thank you, Gary, for making this room available. He's a member. They help all of us. We all benefit. And a lot of our members provide service like that. But
every builder brings in, on average, 2 associate members.
And then the associates, we hope, would also bring in members.
Absolutely.
Any questions? We're running towards the end of time. Want to see if there's anything that we didn't talk about or things that we did talk about that you might have questions on. Yes, sir.
When we're all talking about the land cost and the building cost, what is the ultimate goal for the profit margin?
Depends on level of risk. So if you're buying finished improved lots, you're not taking on the risk, you're gonna have a lesser profit margin. And it also depends on when we bought the land. There's stuff that we own that we've owned for a long time that we have great margins on. We bought it real low. There's stuff we bought at the height of the market that is really, profits are really. And I'd say in general, builders can go for a 10 to 12% net margin, but it will depend on.
And if you look at, you can get public information about it. All the public builders, all their financial statements are available to anyone to see. And there's lots of them that make 2%, 4%, when they make 5%. I mean, that's after all expenses, paying your taxes, all that. They're feeling okay. If you get to 10%, you're happy, real happy.
How does the appraisal process fit in?
Appraisals for homes.
Yeah, I mean, when you're taking into account that the value is there, that you're selling it for, it would be appraised, is that getting away?
That is a real important part of our business. But the market kind of dictates.
It's a little more of a problem on the infill stuff. To be honest with you, when these guys are in these communities, they're sort of building for their commons. So when you go into a neighborhood and where you're tearing down a 1,200 square foot single family home that built post-World War II and you're building a 1,000,007, it's a sleepless night until you get to the end.
But it even happens in communities that are larger, where we have someone put 1 million options in. They finished the basement. They're $75,000 more than the next most expensive home in the community, which was $700. They're at $775.
Where your margins really are.
And now the appraiser comes in and says, that's $775, there's not another home anywhere around them that's anywhere close to that. Your appraisal's $745. So it's an important process, but our last session, we'll talk in detail about that. Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, you had made a mention of when you go to the National Builder Show, and then you come back and notice we try to bring things. And you said that could be some of this market. What are you guys seeing? Are you seeing things more modern?
Definitely.
Yeah, okay. So I'm seeing the same. I was just curious what you guys are seeing. Anything else that you're seeing that's unique or new and trending here?
I don't know how to do, open floor plans are pretty much standard here, maybe for the West Coast, or that.
Arts and crafts style elevations, you're seeing more and more of that. That seems to be a trend.
I appreciate it. I know you can't.
We are, in general though, we are a more conservative market. These trends tend to start on the West Coast. I come here, so, but there are even more conservative